The Thing humbles Bullseye, and it's amazing. So this is the Thing series, and what this does is this initially opens up with Ben Grimm after some crazy adventure with the Fantastic Four, feeding his cat, drifting off to sleep. He lays down at 8:33 a.m. and he's woken up 5 minutes later, right? And at that point, he's like, okay, what in the world is going on? Only to find out that Herbie found some guy kind of skulking around the whole place and trying to get up through the elevators to where Ben Grimm was at. Now, at that point, this guy introduces himself as Marty Flynn, and Ben just kind of, slams the door in his face and is like, I don't want to have anything to do with this guy. But what Marty reveals is that his sister's daughter has gone missing, right? His niece is gone, and he needs help finding her. Now, the cool thing about this is that Marty is actually an old friend of Ben Grimm, and friend might be kind of a loose word, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second, because what ends up going on is Ben and Marty end up making their way, kind of going around and picking up what little clues they can and doing their own bit of an investigation. But what Marty's work has led him to is a guy by the name of Melvin Potter. Now that name may very well be familiar to you because Melvin went by the name Gladiator. He's an old school character in Marvel, debuted in Daredevil number 18 way back in the day. But this guy never really had like significant, meaningful superpowers. And so one of the things that Ben says is like, just to clarify, this guy Mel, right? We're going to find him at this bar at 9:30 in the morning. And that's where Marty's just like, yeah. Right? Like, that's where we're going to find him. The guy's going through some stuff. And so once they finally find him at a table, Marty walks up to him and it's just like, Mr. Potter. And this dude just sits up and just starts screaming, right? They did it! They put things in me! Which is kind of crazy. It's tragic, but it's crazy at the same time. He's like, of course they did it! Of course they did it! Anything for his pleasure! This guy has clearly been traumatized. Clearly been traumatized in a pretty significant way. And alcohol is the only real way for him to cope. And so once they bring him down where he keeps yelling things like Gollum, monster, right? These kind of just nonsensical phrases, he just keeps saying anything for his pleasure. Anything for his pleasure. And initially Ben is like, look man, like I've been up all night fighting space squids, I haven't slept, and I'm really running out of patience here. And Gladiator just clocks this guy. Now Gladiator has never demonstrated enough strength on any level to be able to clock Ben Grimm in any meaningful way, right? It's so strange that he's able to pull that off. And even Ben says that, right? Like, geez Louise, have you been working out? Because I thought you never had any real superpowers. And he's like, so how come you can fight like this? You get bit by a radioactive gorilla or something, and the whole time, Melvin's just screaming the same thing. Put things in me, crawling under my skin. So clearly this guy has been tortured. And so literally there comes a point where Ben just grabs Melvin and lifts him up in the air, and Melvin calls him Joey, and then just starts pummeling into him, just saying the name Joe. And Ben's like, dude, I have never met Joey. I don't know what you're talking about. And the whole time, Melvin's just flipping his lid, just attacking Ben as much as humanly possible, hitting with every blow he possibly can. And Ben's like, look man, like we're just trying to find a girl. It's a little girl, it's a buddy of mine's niece. And he's like, I saw a girl, monster. You know better than anyone. The girl and Joey and the king and the clown, they took me to the tower. They put things under my skin. The Empire, St. Pat's Cordoba, you know better than most. And that's what's kind of wild because he just keeps saying like, you know better. You should know these things. He calls him a monster, starts attacking him again. The guy's almost giving like these indications of schizophrenia, right? The inability to distinguish between reality and fantasy, what is real and what is not. So Ben does the only thing he can do. He just clocks this guy and sends him flying out of the building. And so at that point, it's like, okay, clearly something bigger is going on here. And it leads Ben down this investigation of sorts, which leads him to Bullseye. Now, before we get there, right, here's the cool thing. He gives a card to the woman who runs the bar. And it's like, look, I'm sorry about everything that happened. Call this number, go to this address and ask for Reed Richards. He'll take care of it. And so ultimately they just kind of go along and continue on their journey. But while this is going on, Turk Barrett makes a phone call. Now, Turk Barrett is not an overly significant character. He's largely just kind of been a small-time guy working within Hell's Kitchen. Originally started out in Daredevil 69 as a Daredevil villain, but clearly he's calling Kingpin here. And he's like, there's a situation, right? This guy came here and he was asking all sorts of questions and throwing people around. And that's where Kingpin's like, wait, slow down, right? Who's asking questions? What's the problem? And Turk says, it's the big one, sir. It's Ben Grimm. And so what you do is you pick up with this moment that's almost like something out of the Warriors. It's this kind of broadcast that goes out among all these various supervillains, the Serpent Society, the Wrecking Crew, the whole 9 yards, right? Here's a cool thing. They say, good news, true believers. Word on the street is that somebody's mad, real mad, at a certain rocky blue-eyed monster. Any bruisers and boppers out there that think you've got the juice to take out Yancy Street's finest, you better find him fast, because whoever can make the thing fall apart first is looking at a fat payday. How fat? How about $10 million? My goodness, someone wants this guy bad. So who's it gonna be, tough guys? I love that. I love that whole theme. It's so cool. It's like a 1960s, 1970s, The Warriors type of vibe. And so what you end up doing here is picking back up with the Thing and with Marty as they're kind of making their way through the city. And here's the thing, but Tish, as they're walking along, Bullseye confronts him and he's like, you guys lost? And at that point, Ben's just like, I mean, are you talking to me or are you talking to him? And of course, Bullseye's like, I'm talking to you, Gravel Pit. And at that point, Ben's like, all right, look, man, like, no, I'm not lost. I'm also running on virtually no sleep at all. Like, we're looking for somebody. And then Bullseye like throws ninja stars at him and they just bounce off his chest. At that point, Marty bails. He's like, nah, I don't want to have any part of this, son. And Ben's just like, what in the heck? And he's like, hey, pal, maybe we haven't met, but I'm Benjamin J. Grimm, rocky, unbreakable skin, superhumanly strong. So I think it's hilarious and important to acknowledge here, Ben doesn't know who Bullseye is, because Bullseye is not important enough for Ben Grimm to know about. Which I think really just kind of shows the difference between someone like Bullseye and someone like Ben. But here's the funny thing about that. If Bullseye actually wanted to kill Ben, I want to know from you guys, do you think he could actually do it? If it was really his intention to kill Ben. But here's one of the things, right? In response to everything that Ben just said about his identity and all that kind of stuff, Bullseye's like, yeah, I know, man. Idol of millions, fantastic friends, monster mood swings, heart of gold. And so Ben's like, yeah, okay, so you know me. Then you should know those crummy little ninja stars do not hurt me at all. And that's where Bullseye's like, the big man says that you can't be here. And Ben's just kind of like, okay, so clearly there's something bigger going on here. It's not enough that this girl's been kidnapped. Somebody wants me removed off this whole investigation and is trying to chase me away. And before he can ask any other questions, Bullseye throws a ninja star in his eye. And Ben's like, bro, really? Right in the eyeball? And that's where Bullseye's like, I mean, that's why they call me Bullseye, right? Just keep it moving, Jumbo. And Ben's like, not now, my friend. I was perfectly content to just keep on keeping on. You do you, I do me. But now, I gotta break you. I gotta help you understand your place in the bigger picture. So he goes to knock down this light pole, and of course, Bullseye just jumps off with the greatest of ease, and he's like, look, man, don't say I didn't ask you nicely. And he like throws these daggers at Ben, and they just bounce off of him, and he's like, dude, I told you, man, unbreakable skin, super strong, you're not gonna hurt me with these things. But then Bullseye kicks him in the neck, which indicates that just like Gladiator, Bullseye's received some kind of enhancements that have increased his strength. Not enough to cold cock Ben Grimm, but certainly enough to get his attention, because he's like, dude, how in the world did you do that? And that's where Bullseye's just like, magic. And Ben's like, cool, well, I don't have time for magic, but I do have time for clobbering you. So he immediately goes after Bullseye, and Bullseye, being as agile as he is and one of the best martial artists in the world, just jumps over him. And it's like, look, man, we don't have to do any of this. You can just leave. And then he throws a razor blade in Ben's mouth. Like, why would you do that? Why would you just throw a razor blade in a person's mouth, knowing how terrible of an experience that would be? Well, the reason why Bullseye did that within Marvel continuity is because he's what we as the fans refer to as a dick. And so literally Ben's just like, okay, I'm done, right? I've had enough of this, right? Talking with a razor blade in his mouth, he's like, what do you know about this man's niece? And that's where Bullseye's like, man, you gotta be a lot more specific, dude. I've killed a lot of nieces in my time. And Marty's like, she's 8 years old, she's got brown hair. And that's where Bullseye's like, wait a minute, look, man, here, understand something. I will kill a whole city block full of people. I'll kill all kinds of folks. I'll go after political officials if you task me with it. But an 8-year-old girl, no, right? I am not that kind of psychopath, which I guess is kind of a true statement. And Ben's like, you know what? And then just like clocks him, knocks him out cold, and is like, I believe him, and just leaves. But here's the thing, they don't walk away entirely. They actually kind of wait around for a minute, because keep in mind, while Ben Grimm is used to doing great big huge cosmic events and space escapades and all that kind of stuff, he grew up on Yancy Street, right? He was just a guy around the block. Not the way Jennifer Lopez says it. She's obviously lying her ass off. But one of these things where he's like, I'm just from the neighborhood. So he knows how these kinds of things work. And so he's like, let's just sort of see what happens. Because what ends up going on is a van comes riding up, they load up Bullseye, and they peel off. And so that's where Ben's like, I told you, right? We needed to wait. We needed to see what's going on. Something bigger's happening here. And at that point, the Kingpin makes a phone call, right? And he says, Benjamin Grimm almost just walked in my front door. And that's where this guy's like, I'm handling it. I'm headed to the location right now. And Kingpin's just like, can you tell me why the Fantastic Four are suddenly sniffing around my business? Whatever happens, this product cannot be held up. I've given you a lot of leeway on this job. Was that a mistake? And this guy's response, no, sir. And the response to the Kingpin, we have important clients waiting. Promises have been made, and I do not break my promises. And he hangs up the phone because understand, right? When it comes to Kingpin, when he asks you a question, you better have an answer. Yes, no, or I'm working on it. Anything other than that, and he might kill you for inconveniencing him. And so at that point, Ben Grimm and Marty end up getting into a taxi cab. And bless this driver's poor soul, right? Ben Grimm cramming into this thing. Who even knows how this taxi cab's going anywhere at all? And it's just like, follow that van, right? So they eventually end up following this van to some shady waterfront warehouses. And at that point, Ben's just like, hang back, right? Let's see if Bullseye's still knocked out, because if he's awake, we're gonna have to deal with all this nonsense. But in the middle of all that, they unload Marty's niece. And it's like, okay, cool, that's our move, we can go and grab her. But then the limousine pulls up, right? This mystery man arrives on the scene and is like, what is going on here? I was getting calls from the big man ripping into me about superheroes. So you're supposed to be flying under the radar. So tell me, we've got better news here. Are the subjects at least responding? So clearly people are being experimented on, right? What was happening with Gladiator, that it's not just him, it's happening with other people outside of Melvin Potter. And one of these guys are like, I mean, they're responding, but it still wears off after a few hours. And the question is, can the science nerds get us a longer duration? But in the midst of this conversation, Ben shows up and is like, hey, mister, nice suit. Only for us to find out this mystery man in the vehicle is Hammerhead. It's Joseph, right? Now, Joseph is an old school character in Marvel Comics. He was introduced in Amazing Spider-Man 113. He is a old Jerry Conway and John Romita character. The reason why his head is flat is because there was a point in Amazing Spider-Man 114 when his skull was literally shattered. And a guy by the name of Jonas Harrow basically restored his skull and also provided some additional modifications. He's also received others from guys like Mr. Negative, but basically he's got super strength and incredible durability. He's very difficult to destroy. So much so that he usually gives Spider-Man a run for his money. But Ben Grimm, I don't know, man. This is a whole nother issue because Ben, of course, cracks his knuckles and it's like, man, that suit is nice. It's going to be a shame to get blood stains on it. And that's where Hammerhead probably gives one of the coolest lines where he's like, yeah, well, it wouldn't be the first time. And one of the guys asks, like, do you want us to take care of this guy? But before anyone can do anything, the building explodes. The whole warehouse blows up, potentially killing Marty's niece, probably anybody who's inside. People go flying all over the place. Lord only knows who made it out of this thing in one piece. And we won't find out until next month. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.